Today, Schiit Audio is announcing what I think is an immensely important product called the Loki Mini. Now, before we get into it, I need to clarify something. Some years back, Schiit Audio released a DSD DAC called the Loki, but that's been discontinued for quite some time. This new Loki Mini is completely unrelated to that and is not a DAC at all. So what is it? The Loki Mini is Schiit Audio's new 4-band equalizer. Yes, an equalizer. Why are equalizers, or any tone controls for that matter, so taboo with so many audio enthusiasts? Perhaps it's because the audiophile world has been dominated by a more purist mindset, many seeking to keep the signal chain as simple and clean as possible. Maybe it's because of this that the premium audio market hasn't seen much in the way of premium tone controlling electronics. Maybe it's because when someone says the word equalizer to a high-end audio enthusiast, things like these come to mind. As someone who's been an audio enthusiast since my preteen years, I've used some bad equalizers in my time. Equalizers that could suck the life out of music. Equalizers that Jason Stoddard from Schiit Audio describes as a stack of noisy op amps attached to open-frame dust-collecting sliders. Because many of the equalizers that longtime audio hobbyists have used were of that type. The kinds that were packaged in those speakers-included, skyscraper-tall, electronics-filled rack stereo systems you'd buy at appliance stores and department stores. Maybe experiences with those types of equalizers have also contributed to audiophiles loathing the idea of employing tone controls of any type. But well-designed equalizers don't suck the life out of music. In fact, many of your favorite albums probably employed high-quality studio equalizers in their productions. Equalizers like this. Or this. Since most of us aren't studio types, most of us probably haven't used a well-designed hardware equalizer. I use well-designed equalizers regularly, but the ones I use are digital. I use the parametric equalizers in both Amara and Roon. I also use the equalizers in several of my portable digital audio players. Why use equalizers and tone controls at all? Because the music we listen to sometimes needs it. Also, our audio electronics, headphones, and speakers aren't perfect all the time either. How many of us have purchased audio tweaks, changed cables, changed DACs, changed amps, tubes, headphones, or speakers, oftentimes just to chase some minor change to your system's tonal balance? Your system's too bright, your system's too dark, the mids are too recessed. Or maybe your system is right most of the time, but you like to listen to Edith Piaf or Django Reinhardt recordings from the 30s and 40s. You don't think tone controls can actually help breathe life into some of those? Now, as much as I like using the digital parametric equalizers in Amara and Roon, using my mouse and keyboard to make equalizer adjustments isn't nearly as intuitive as simply turning physical knobs until it sounds right. The former can involve choosing your filter type, peak, dip, high shelf, low shelf, etc., choosing the frequency to adjust and the corresponding gain adjustment, working the Q setting to optimize affected bandwidth. I mean, even the more simple controls that involve adding and dragging of EQ points with a mouse aren't as intuitive to me as, again, simply turning physical knobs until it sounds right. And that's where the new Schiit Audio Loki Mini 4-band equalizer comes in. Unlike the poorly executed stack of op amps with open frame sliders equalizers mentioned earlier, the Schiit Audio Loki Mini uses a fully discrete, all-bipolar, symmetrical current feedback design with no capacitors in the signal path and DC servo. For filtering, there's a capacitor gyrator for the 20 Hz control, and capacitor inductor, or LC, for the other 3 bands. In place of open frame sliders, it uses sealed ALPS potentiometers with carefully selected adjustment ranges for fine control. Just as important is how the bypass setting is implemented. It's 100% passive and essentially removes the Loki Mini from your system when you don't need it. Inputs and outputs couldn't be simpler. Left and right unbalanced RCA inputs and outputs. When you do switch in the Loki Mini equalizer, does it suck the life out of the music? No. When you choose to employ an equalizer, you're likely trying to fix a tonal balance problem that is of far greater magnitude than any effect the Loki Mini has on measured transparency. And when you don't need it, you bypass it with the flip of the bypass switch. Now, we're pressed for time as we're in the middle of the shoot for the 2017 Can Jam at RMAF preview video, so I haven't been able to do a full suite of Loki Mini measurements yet. I will do them after RMAF, and I'll post them on the forums. I'll also make sure to include some measurements that show how clean the Loki Mini's bypass is. That said, Schiit Audio's published specs for the Loki Mini are very impressive. I'll post those on the forums now, and you can also find them on Schiit's website. What I was able to find the time to plot on our Audio Precision APX 555 audio analyzer was the effect of each of the Loki Mini's controls on the frequency response. From left to right, the adjustment bands are 20 Hz, 400 Hz, 2 kHz, and 8 kHz. Here's the effect of the 20 Hz knob set to flat, and also to 3 different settings up to the maximum, and 3 different settings down to the minimum. You can see how well calibrated the controls are with good symmetry in both directions. Here's the same for the 400 Hz control, the 2 kHz control, and the 8 kHz control. How do you use the Loki Mini? It really is as simple as turning the controls until it sounds best to you. Kick drum too muddy? Try turning down the 400 Hz control a bit. Need a bit more kick drum attack? Try turning up the 2 kHz control a bit. With headphones, I tend to prefer some low-end reinforcement, so that 20 Hz control gets turned up to varying degrees. Too much sibilance, the 8 kHz control turned to the left will likely help. Cymbals a bit too dead or muted, then turn the 8 kHz knob to the right instead. Again, turn the knobs until it sounds right to you. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that, but understanding where instruments and sounds are located in the audio band does help, so I'll post some helpful links with information about that. Another thing that's simple about all of this is that the Schiit Audio Loki Mini is priced at only $149. So seeing what a well-implemented hardware equalizer can do for you with the Loki Mini is not very risky at all. Personally, I think the Schiit Audio Loki Mini is one of the most important products they've released in quite some time, and I think the Loki Mini will do a lot to dispel the notion that equalizers have no place in premium audio, as I believe they most certainly do. Thanks for watching this episode of HeadFi TV. We'll see you next time.